Today, I'm joined by Dr. Harvey Fineberg, Chairman of the National Academy of Sciences Standing Committee on Emerging Infectious Diseases and 21st Century Health Threats. Dr. Fineberg is also President of the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation and former Dean of the Harvard School of Public Health. Dr. Fineberg, thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. Why don't we just jump right into the editorial that you authored in the New England Journal of Medicine last week that presented a framework on crushing the COVID curve in 10 weeks. Can you give us a little bit of background on what prompted you to write this piece?
Thank you so much. The editorial is really my effort to describe what I think are the necessary steps for us to succeed in the war against the COVID-19 epidemic in the United States. If it is a war, it's a war we have to win. And the idea behind this editorial was that we have to be much more aggressive in defeating this threat than we have been to date.
Absolutely. And your editorial advocates for not just flattening that curve, but crushing it. Can you explain the difference?
Most of the discussion about the epidemic curve talks about slowing it so that we don't overwhelm our medical facilities. That's a good idea and a very valuable concept. But my notion is we shouldn't only try to flatten this curve, we should crush the curve. And that means interrupting the spread of this virus from person to person.
Absolutely. You mentioned the need for anyone with symptoms to undergo diagnostic testing. But what are your thoughts on serological testing to detect antibodies? How does that fit into your framework?
Both serological testing and genomic testing, the PCR, have an important role to play, but the purposes and functions are different. PCR is especially valuable in identifying those who have just been infected. It's not always positive. In fact, it may be falsely negative as much as 30% of the time, but when it is positive, it's very, very clear the person does have this infection. The serological tests do not become positive as early, but they remain positive over a sustained period. And they can help us identify not only who has been infected, but possibly who may be immune to future illness and therefore ready to do more in the community over time as we battle this pandemic.
Right, and that differentiation is so important. Moving over to some potential treatment options, are you encouraged by some of the data that's coming out of the clinical trials on those? Are there any that you see as being particularly viable?
It's early on the clinical trials in the US, but there are a wide range of agents, antiviral agents, drugs that have been used for other purposes, and especially plasma from patients who have recovered from this illness. All may be avenues to lead to effective treatment. The really critical point is to do the randomized controlled clinical studies rapidly but effectively in order to learn with greater confidence what does and what does not work.
Very true. You lay out a number of steps in your editorial. What do you think is the most important thing that we need to be doing to crush this curve?
To start, the most important thing is to establish a unified command structure. The first element of military strategy is unified command. That's a person who is in charge. President Lincoln eventually got to Grant. I believe President Trump needs to find his General Grant to fight this battle in a coherent, concerted, and unified way. We're very lucky in the United States in one respect. The epidemic is not as fully advanced everywhere. It's at different stages. When it's a full-blown outbreak, as in New York right now, we've got to throw everything at it that we possibly can. It's like a firefight in a real war. But other parts of the country have an opportunity to take these aggressive preventive steps so that they never have to experience that kind of pressure on their health system, and more importantly, so that fewer people will die.
And what do you see as the biggest hurdle that is preventing us from really going after this and crushing the curve?
It's not money because the Congress is prepared to put anything it takes. Partly, I think it is organization and will and a kind of inspiration to the whole country that we're all in this together and that we all have to do our parts to defeat this common enemy. And by the way, it's not only for the United States, because this is a global pandemic. With the degree of travel and interaction today, this pandemic is not really going to be over anywhere until it is over everywhere. And therefore, our mobilization, doing the right thing in the United States, will position us to be even more helpful to the rest of the world.
What sort of feedback have you received on your action plan since it was published last week?
I've received a lot of feedback. Many people are saying it's great to finally have a plan. Other people are saying it's unrealistic. The president is never going to do this. Or for some other reason, we can't accomplish what you're saying. I believe in the ingenuity, creativity, and determination of an incredible array of people in this country. I've seen already from the little glimpses that I have had of the type of ingenuity and applications that people in science and in the media, in high tech, in every walk of life are figuring out ways to make a contribution. I believe that if we can't do it nationally, maybe we can do it on a state level. If we can't do it on an all state level, maybe we can do it for counties. If we can't do it in every county, maybe we can do it in some areas and show the way. We're very good at learning from one another. And if some of us can take these steps and crush the curve, I think it'll be a great object lesson for the entire nation.
Definitely. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Well, I think you've covered it really well, and I appreciate the chance to be with you.
Absolutely. We thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. Your perspective is so valuable, and I really hope that it inspires us to come together to battle COVID. So thank you.
Thank you very much.